So picture this. It's 1983, and the US Army gets a very strange assignment. They're told to analyze a technique for altering consciousness called the gateway experience. What they came back with was this wild 29-page report that gets into out-of-body experiences, holograms, and even time travel. And today, we're going to break down that exact declassified document.
And get this, the author of the report, Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonald, starts the whole thing off with this incredibly blunt admission to his commander. This wasn't some casual project. No, it was a serious and, as he puts it, difficult business. You can just feel that this thing pushed the absolute limits of official military research.
And I want to be clear, this wasn't some fringe speculation. To even write this assessment, McDonald had to build a model that was scientifically valid. We're talking about him digging into biomedical science, quantum mechanics, and theoretical physics, all to try and explain how consciousness could literally transcend time and space.
Okay, so before we jump into the really mind-bending stuff, the report does something smart. It grounds everything in the actual mechanics of the human brain. To figure out how to alter consciousness, first you've got to understand how it works on a normal day.
The analysis kicks off with a really simple way to look at the brain. The report calls our logical, verbal left brain a screener. It's like a bouncer at a club, constantly checking IDs, assessing, and categorizing reality. The right brain, though, it's the total opposite. It's non-critical, it sees the big picture, and it pretty much accepts whatever the left brain lets through. And that's the key idea. If you want to alter consciousness, you have to find a way to get past that bouncer.
The report points to hypnosis as a perfect example of this. The whole technique is designed to distract or just plain bore the left brain. Basically, you're putting the screener to sleep. And once that filter is down, hypnotic suggestions can walk right past the velvet rope and into the non-critical right brain to be acted on.
Then, it offers this surprisingly physical explanation for meditation. The document claims that when you concentrate really intensely, you can change the rhythm of your own heart sounds. This supposedly creates these tiny vibrations, the report actually calls them acoustical standing waves, in the fluid of your brain, and that is what stimulates the right hemisphere.
And this is brilliant because it shows a completely different path. See, unlike hypnosis or meditation, biofeedback actually uses the left brain. It teaches the logical screener to visualize what it wants, it uses external tools to see if it's working, and then it consciously trains the right brain to do it on command. It's pretty cool.
All right, now we get to the real core of the report, the gateway experience itself, and it relies on a super radical model of physics to make its case. This right here is where things start to get really, really interesting.
So what is the gateway experience? It's a training system. It uses specific sound frequencies, called Hemi-Sync, to get both halves of your brain working together in perfect harmony. And the ultimate goal? Well, it's to change your consciousness so profoundly that you can actually escape the physical world and the normal rules of time and space. The report uses this absolutely perfect analogy to explain how Hemi-Sync works. It says that in our normal state, our mind is kind of like a lamp. The energy is all scattered and weak. But once you introduce the discipline of Hemi-Sync, that lamp becomes a laser. All of a sudden, you've got this coherent, powerful, and focused stream of energy that you can actually aim. Now, to even begin to understand how that laser works, you first have to accept this one foundational idea from the report. It flat out states that what we think of as solid matter, well, it doesn't really exist. It says the whole universe is made up of these complex, oscillating energy grids. At our most basic level, we're just vibrating energy. And that idea leads right into the next crucial concept, the hologram. See, a hologram isn't just a 3D picture. It's a 3D image stored in energy interference patterns. But here's the really wild part. Every single piece of that pattern, no matter how tiny, contains all the information of the entire image.
The report uses a great simple analogy to make this super clear. Imagine you drop a few pebbles into a bowl of water. You see all the ripples crossing over each other, creating a really complex pattern. Now, what if you could flash freeze that water instantly, and then shine a laser through that frozen pattern? A 3D image of the original pebbles would just appear. That frozen pattern? That's the hologram.
So this all leads to the report's most profound and frankly mind-blowing claim that the entire universe is one gigantic, incredibly complex hologram. And guess what? Our minds are also holograms. So consciousness, the very act of thinking and being, is simply our personal hologram reading the universal hologram to create the reality we experience.
So now that the report has laid out this whole holographic model of reality, it gets to the ultimate goal, explaining how a focused consciousness can actually break free from the limits of our physical dimension. The whole model starts with a concept they call the absolute. You can think of it like a dimension of pure, infinite energy that's in a state of perfect rest. It's the static, timeless source code from which our vibrating, dynamic universe, our hologram, is projected. So how do we get a peek behind the curtain? The report calls it the click-out phenomenon. Think about a wave going up and down. Right at the very top, before it comes back down, it has to stop for an infinitesimally small moment. The report claims our consciousness does the same thing, and in that tiny moment of rest, it briefly clicks out of time and space. The whole point of the gateway technique is to speed up those clicks until they merge into one continuous state.
And here's the absolutely mind-bending result of all that. When consciousness is in that continuous click-out state, it's not trapped by linear time anymore. It can access the universal hologram directly, a place where all of time, past, present, and future, exists all at once.
Finally, the report doesn't just leave it at theory. It actually outlines the specific practical techniques that the Gateway program teaches people to navigate and even use this expanded state of awareness. It's not just ideas, it's a toolkit. And this toolkit has some pretty amazing stuff in it. There are methods like patterning, where you supposedly project a hologram of a future you want to help make it happen. You've got remote viewing, and then, most incredibly, Focus 15 for going into the past and Focus 21 for going into the future, all by navigating that universal hologram.
But you know what's really fascinating? Lieutenant Colonel MacDonald himself, the author, notes that these radical ideas aren't actually new. He points out that mystics and ancient beliefs, from Hindu texts to Tibetan teachings, have been describing the universe in almost identical ways for centuries, as this one, unified, interconnected whole, where every single part reflects everything else.
So, we're left with this massive question, aren't we? Is this 1983 Army report just a declassified trip into the bizarre, an official government document that explores what most people would call pure pseudoscience? Or did it somehow manage to build a rational, physics-based framework for understanding one of the deepest mysteries there is, human consciousness? That's definitely something to think about.